Hi there, my name is Kim. I have a studio called Colorful Spirits in Elm City, North Carolina. When I do my classes, I found it difficult to do a demo and help my students at the same time. So I began creating these slideshows that they can see the steps as I go around and help them. So that's why this video is laid out this way. In the future, I should be painting on the videos, but for now I have a bunch of these ready, so I'm gonna upload these for you. I hope you enjoy them. Since I teach classes at my studio, I buy my paints from Jerry's Artorama. I use the Creative Inspirations because I buy the jugs, so I have plenty for my classes. I also use their Pro Stroke brushes, the Power Creative Mark brushes. So where I started here was with a number 10 brush, a large brush, and I began with using Viridian green and light green and just alternating between the two to have a interesting background. And I just use kind of large X strokes for a vague kind of out of focus background like this. Okay, here I added some phthalo blue around the outer edges just to give it another dark aspect to kind of give it some depth. And here I began adding bright yellow. It was a cadmium yellow light, and I just added it in some spots to create interest. So we've got, we know there's an interesting background. We know there's probably more flowers and trees or something behind it, but we're not quite sure what it is since it's out of focus. So I also paint the sides of the canvas so that the painting can be hung up without a frame. Here you'll decide where your daisies will be, so you're just going to make those large circles to indicate where they're going to go. And I left the canvas mainly white underneath, but you don't necessarily have to do that. In this step, I added cadmium orange hue and the cad yellow light to create the centers, and I used some burnt sienna to indicate where the parts of the center of the flowers will be in shadow, and the cadmium yellow light kind of highlights where the light is hitting the centers of those daisies. And here's a close-up of that, and I wanted to show that because I want you to see the texture in there. So I switched here probably to the number 6 brush or even the number 4 to get some smaller strokes to show that texture of the center of the daisies. It just makes it very visually interesting. Okay, and here I added some Payne's gray to the edges that are going to be in shadow. Now a lot of that's going to get covered up once we add the petals, but a little bit of it will peek through and it will just give it some depth. Okay, so here we're going back to that large brush, the number 10, and we're really loading up the white paint on that brush so we can get some really thick textured petals on these flowers. So this part, it's really fun. Don't be afraid. Just load up that paint and start, from the center out, putting those petals on there. Here I added some Payne's gray with a smaller brush, probably the number 4. And Payne's gray is a great color if you don't want to use pure black. It's got a little bluish tint to it. I just love it. And it just helps to give these petals some interesting texture and some lights and darks. And then when you finish that first flower, you're going to move on to the second flower. Okay, so here we're going to curl some of those petals and some are going to overlap the other flowers. So we're going to have a little fun here and get a little creative with this part. Again, don't be scared. You can do this. It's really easy, so just watch this next step. Okay, so here there's a couple of the petals on the top flower that are kind of curling and overlapping the center of the flower, and then some are overlapping that middle flower. And it's just to make it, again, a little visually interesting, a little unpredictable. Flowers are kind of fun like that. And then you're going to add the petals to the third flower and add the Payne's gray strokes to those other two flowers. And I also added just a very light yellow to some of those petals, very sparingly. Okay, and you should be done. You sign your name at the bottom and be proud of yourself.